and welcome to First Parish Church, Unitarian Universalist Northborough. We begin with announcements, and this morning our announcement is this huge joy. I can tell by all your smiling faces that our guest musician this morning is Ron Williams, and his longer bio is available on our website. I will just hit some highlights. Ron is a renowned singer, lecturer, and vocal instructor, known for his exceptional talent and contributions to the world of opera and oratorio. He is an artist committed to the works of 20th century American composers, and we are very blessed to have him here this morning. Thank you, Ron, for joining with us. And thank you, Olga. So, welcome. We Unitarian Universalists are a non-creedal, religiously liberal faith tradition. We hold in our worship and in our faith formation that each individual and each community will explore a wide and varied set of beliefs and ideas that encourage us to live life as a spiritual journey, deepening our connections to compassion, justice, and an understanding of eternal truth. I am Reverend Abigail Stockman, the interim minister here. If you have any questions about Unitarian Universalism or about this congregation, please don't hesitate to be in touch with me. We are a community in multiple locations this morning. You may be sitting in a pew, you may be sitting in your living room, you may be sitting on your bed or outdoors somewhere and joining us online. So let us take a moment to wave to one another, to those online, to each other here in the parish house, until the chime is rung. That did not. This is the day. This is the morning. This is the day that life and love has created. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
This is the light of life and love. May it open our eyes, our hearts, and our minds to widen our understanding and our capacities to expand life's possibilities for all and love's light into every life.
Please rise in spirit, body as you are able, and let us sing our opening hymn, number 125, from the Crush of Wealth and Power. The words will also be on the screen. You move that. In this culture of the United States, the crush of wealth and power has fallen disproportionately upon those whose humanity resides in black, brown, red, yellow, and darker skinned bodies. We know too, as the guest minister Jane Thixton noted a few weeks ago, that it also falls with more weight upon gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and non-gender conforming bodies, as well as upon those whose abilities do not fall in the range of what we call normal. Poet Langston Hughes vibrantly captures and communicates in his poetry and prose what it feels like to constantly live under the crush of wealth and power, as we will hear in both his recited and sung poems. And I want to give a special thanks to Ron for agreeing to also read this morning and recite some of the poems.
Harlem by Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?
Let us just sit for a moment in silence with those words. The sharing of those special and personal moments of joy and sorrow in our living is a ritual of connection observed in some of our faith communities and in this one. It is a time to briefly share and a time for witnessing one another's sharing as an act of worship. We do this in faith that a joy shared increases joy in the world, and a sorrow or burden shared lightens our load, knowing that others are holding us in love during life's challenging moments. If you are here in the meeting house and have a personal joy or sorrow to briefly share, we invite you to come forward and stand over here behind or in front of the piano, and come forward and drop a stone if you wish. Please tell us your name before you share your personal joy or sorrow. If you are online, please raise your hand or the hand icon, and we will call upon you from in here. Thank you. Let us continue in the spirit of prayer. Precious Lord, Spirit of life and love, we are concerned about how we are doing. We are weary and worried. The world no longer seems to work as we expect it to. The weather is different. The sugaring uncertain, the climate uncertain. Our sense of safety and the comforting routines has been breached. Our ways of interacting with businesses, with our medical structure, with politics and governing systems, even with friends and loved ones, are so different now. Each requires more time interacting with automated systems and humans who seem to be turning into automatons. How do we connect? Do we use a phone or a text or an email or a Facebook or an Instagram or talk to one another? Precious Lord, Spirit of life and love, we are wearied and worried. How will we go on? Our bodies may no longer be working as we expect them to. Disease, chronic conditions, and simple aging are taking their toll and thrusting us into overloaded systems that are also struggling to find their way in a world no longer working as we expect it to. Precious Lord, Spirit of life and love, we who once believed deeply in our ability to control our world are coming face to face with that over which we have no control. We need help. We need one another to find the strength, the courage, and the humor to take on life as it is and not as we wish it to be. The courage to ground ourselves in love and not fear. Precious Lord, Spirit of life and love, may we seek to find more you and less I as we face each challenge and each day. May we open our eyes amidst all this weary worry to the joy, the beauty, the truth, the long lives, the well-being that also surround us. May we express gratitude for the gifts of life, of artistry, and of love that have come our way. Precious Lord, Spirit of life and love, whatever words speak to your heart, open us fully to this journey of life. Amen. Let us have a few moments of silence. Amen.
Our half plate for the month of February goes to Habitat for Humanity. Our financial offering each week is shared between our congregation's operating fund and a designated nonprofit organization. And for the month of February, we set aside half for Habitat for Humanity. And this is from their Worcester Area Habitat website. Habitat for Humanity works in more than 70 countries. They've helped more than 59 million people improve their living conditions since 1976. 59 million. Habitat works together with families, local communities, volunteers, and partners from around the world so that more people are able to live in affordable and safe homes. Their advocacy efforts focus on policy reform to remove systemic barriers preventing low-income and historically underserved families from accessing adequate, affordable shelter. May we as a congregation continue to be as generous as we are able. The offering for the work of this congregation and the work of Habitat for Humanity will now be gratefully received, and we hope gratefully given.
In some place in the sun, to dance and to whirl till the quick day is done, then rest at cool evening beneath a tall tree. When night comes on gently, black like me, that is my dream. To fling my arms wide in the face of the sun, dance well, well, till the pale day is done. Rest that cool evening, a tall slim tree, night comes on gently, like me, night coming tenderly, like me.
Now that you've sat down, I'm going to invite you to stand up again. Or just sit where you are and read. And we're going to do democracy and then go right into I-2. So that works. Please.
Democracy by Langston Hughes. Democracy will not come today, this year, nor ever through compromise and fear. I have as much right as the other fellow has to stand on my own 2 feet on and own the land. I tire so of hearing people say, let things take their course. Tomorrow is another day. I do not need my freedom when I am dead. I cannot live on tomorrow's bread. Freedom is a strong seed planted in a great need. I live here too. I want freedom, just as you. This next song is a poem by Langston Hughes, but it's told by, for want of a better word, a kitchen slave. It is funny. It is poignant. I too sing America. I am the dark brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company calls. But I laugh and eat well and grow strong. I'll sit at the table when company comes. No one will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. They'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed.
Not sure anything can come after all that beautiful recitation and singing. Thank you. But I will tell you, in case you don't know, a little bit about the Harlem Renaissance, a movement of powerful, creative, magnificent Black artists that emerged 1 century ago out of the confluence of several factors. Among those factors is the history of the development of the concept of race, identifying and categorizing outward differences in groups of human bodies and their developed cultures, to rationalize the brutal treatment and gross misuse in the service of greed and fear by one group of people over another. Ultimately, this concept became affirmed by religions, by philosophers, by developing sciences, by politicians, and it became so ingrained in cultures that it was assumed and consumed as natural as breathing the air. Other factors arose from the history of that brutal misuse, specifically here in the United States, the fact of slavery by race. The Civil War which in its own brutality ended de facto slavery. From there, the rest of the story, I'm actually going to read from the Smithsonian's African American History Museum exhibit on the Harlem Renaissance. With the end of the Civil War, it begins in 1865, hundreds of thousands of African Americans newly freed from the yoke of slavery in the South began to dream of fuller participation in American society, including political empowerment, equal economic opportunity, and economic and cultural self-determination. Unfortunately, by the late 1870s, less than 15 years after the end of the war, the dream was largely dead as white supremacy was quickly restored to the Reconstruction South. White lawmakers on state and local levels passed strict racial segregation laws known as Jim Crow laws that made African Americans second-class citizens. While a small number of African Americans were able to become landowners, most were exploited as sharecroppers, a system designed to keep them poor and powerless. Hate groups like the Ku Klux Klan perpetuated lynchings and conducted campaigns of terror and intimidation to keep African Americans from voting or exercising other fundamental rights. With booming economies across the North and Midwest offering industrial jobs for workers of every race, many African Americans realized their hopes for a better standard of living and a more racially tolerant environment that lay outside the South. By the turn of the 20th century, which, by the way, is when Langston Hughes was born, the Great Migration was underway as hundreds of thousands of African Americans relocated to cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, Detroit, Philadelphia, and New York. The Harlem section of Manhattan, which covers just 3 square miles, became a destination for African Americans of all backgrounds. And it drew nearly 175,000 African Americans in the early 20th century, making the neighborhood the largest concentration of Black people in the world. From unskilled laborers to educated middle class, they shared common experiences of slavery, emancipation, and racial oppression, as well as a shared determination to forge a new identity as a free people. The Great Migration drew to Harlem some of the greatest minds and brightest talents of the day. Between World War I and the mid-1930s, they produced one of the most significant eras of cultural expression in our nation's history, the Harlem Renaissance. It encompassed poetry and prose, painting and sculpture, jazz and swing, opera and dance. What united these diverse art forms was their realistic presentation of what it meant to be Black in America, what writer Langston Hughes called an expression of our individual dark-skinned selves, as well as a new militancy in asserting their civil and political rights. One last sentence from the Smithsonian. Small paragraph from the Smithsonian. At the height of the movement, Harlem was the epicenter of American culture. The neighborhood bustled with African American owned and run publishing houses, newspapers, music companies, playhouses, nightclubs, and cabarets, as well as regular businesses that aren't mentioned in here. Ordinary, everyday groceries and pharmacies. Goes on, the literature, music, and fashion they created defined culture and cool for blacks and whites alike in America and around the world. The impact of the Harlem Renaissance on America was indelible. The self-portrait of African-American life, identity, and culture that emerged from Harlem was transmitted to the world at large, challenging the racist and disparaging stereotypes of the Jim Crow South. In doing so, it radically redefined how people of other races viewed African Americans and understood the African American experience. And it ends noting that this new spirit of self-determination and pride and social consciousness and commitment to political activism would provide a foundation for the civil rights movement of the 1950s and the 1960s. I have a dream is no dream deferred. We hear all that self-determination, that pride, that challenge to Jim Crow and the spiritual awakening in the poems and the prose of Langston Hughes, which I invite you to explore. We heard it this morning spoken and sung so beautifully. The passion and the call to action are palpable. Even as a white identified person, I can taste that yearning, the demand, and the human need within those poems. And it speaks to something in me. And I want to be clear when I name the ways in which these poems also speak to non-Black identified people. I'm not in any manner equating or diminishing the horrors, the tyrannies of Black and brown bodies' experiences with slavery and with racism. In no way am I comparing that with those of white identified experiences. While these poems come from and address a uniquely Black perspective of living in early 20th century United States, their brilliance is captured in their ability to speak to the universal desire for freedom and equity and justice within each and every one of us. The desire to be heard, the desire and the ability to express ourself fully. A few weeks ago from this pulpit, you heard the Reverend Jane Thixton preach on all the ways in which the poem I Too might address many different aspects of self and being that experience exclusion in our culture and our democracy. And I ask you, who among us has not experienced some dream, no matter how small, to the quantity of the roadblocks are not necessarily comparable to those who have been enslaved and experienced Jim Crow, but some experience of a dream deferred creates in all of us an opening to hear this deep demand that a pathway to the realization of all dreams, everyone's dream, every one person's dreams for a fairer, more equitable, more just world must be opened. A pathway must be opened. I cannot live on tomorrow's bread. writes Hughes. I do not need my freedom when I'm dead. Now, so how do we open those pathways? How do we, a primarily white identified group of people, how do we open these pathways for all people? Now, I want to tell you something. I talk about white identified and black identified. And maybe you're wondering why I don't just say white and black. And the reason is this: I have to constantly remind myself, day in, day out, moment by moment, that those words have no scientific meaning. There is no such thing as race. Ron reminded me this morning that 99.5% of our DNA is shared. The rest of it got me my large Jewish notes. And it got you whatever you got. So when I say white identified, it speaks to how I identify within the culture and how other people identify me within the culture. The same thing is true for black identified. It is how other people are being identified, may also self-identify. But because it has had such harmful consequences, we need to remind ourselves there is nothing real about this scientifically. Now, there's real culture, there's real historical experiences. Those are real, not to be dismissed and thrown away. So how do we, the mostly white identified people, how do we begin to open a pathway that helps all people realize their dreams, find freedom, experience equity and justice? We open within us. Often after prayers, you hear me say, within, among, between, and beyond. And that is perhaps a way to open the pathway. We open it within us. This is our own spiritual awakening to how we participate in deferring our own dreams, how we limit ourselves. Is this what the spirit of life and love, the spirit of life, of God, of precious Lord, is whatever word works for us to explain the great mysteries of life and simply the gift of life itself? Is this what it wishes for our lives, that we limit ourselves? And when we begin to recognize how we limit ourselves, we can begin to expand and widen the possibilities of how we might unwittingly, unconsciously participate in limiting others. So opening within to find the ways we limit ourselves and reduce ourselves to less than who we truly are. This is the pride we hear and the call for action in Hughes's poetry. People who have been told for centuries before, by people who believed they owned other human beings, that they were not fully human. the spiritual awakening of the Harlem Renaissance said, no, we are people. We are human. We have rights. We deserve a dream. We deserve freedom. We deserve this democracy. We deserve this within ourselves and around ourselves and in this culture, in this system. We open the pathway among us by listening to one another so that we hear we are not alone in having deferred dreams, of having placed limits on ourselves, in perhaps confessing to one another that we have participated in setting limits around others. To hear that others may experience some of the same roadblocks to realizing dreams. Are they common roadblocks? Are they part of a system? How can we challenge them? Again, you can see where the Harlem Renaissance opened this conversation up among African Americans and Black identified people who were coming north and living in ghettos. We can open the pathway between us to recognize the ways in which we prevent one another from realizing dreams and begin to brainstorm ways to address them. And we can open the pathways beyond us with acts of justice to address systemic blocks to realizing some dreams, such as in the case of the systemic racism in our culture, and acting out of the love, the justice, the interdependence, the generosity, equity, pluralism, and call to transformation in human relationships that we say we affirm and promote here. Freedom is a strident call in Hughes's poems, the freedom to act, to move, to have agency and power in one's own life. And when I read these poems, I notice within my own body some way in which I am drawn to notice the ways in which I have restricted and constricted my own body as Hughes addresses a community of people whose bodies have truly been restricted and repressed by other people and walked on and stamped on and used. And then I notice the ways in which I have done that to myself as a woman, told to be a little bit unintrusive and to keep to myself, stay a little bit small, as a person of a particular class who's been told not to be too obstreperous or noticeable, as my family tried to integrate from their Jewish background and assimilate into America, not to be too loud. All the ways in which I constricted my body, and Hughes speaks to those in each one of the poems. He talks about, he uses the language of body, festering like a sore, he says in the poem of Harlem, in the poem Harlem, or do our deferred dreams sag like a heavy load? To stand, he says in Democracy, to stand on my 2 feet, not to stand in the air, not to stand on an idea, but to stand in this body on my 2 feet, planted in a great need. And finally, in Dream Variations, to fling my arms that freedom to fling open, to whirl and to dance and to rest in the cool evening under a tree, to fling and dance and whirl. What is more embodied than that? And I wonder about the ways in which the rest of you who are white identified may also have felt in your lifetimes constricted in your body movements, constricted in holding physical space in the world. Maybe because you're a female, maybe identified person, maybe for different reasons. But it's the freedom that I am called to when I hear these poems, to release a little bit of that constriction, to find a little bit of freedom in my body that wasn't there before. Our closing hymn this morning is "O Freedom" from South Africa. And what I want to invite you to do is to find, in South Africa, songs are moved to. Bodies are invited to move, to be free, to find their place. I invite you this morning, as we rise in spirit, body as you are able, to move, if that is what you are called to do this morning, to sing with great spirit. You can do what I do. You can sing off key, you can hit the note and not have it come out, but let your body go, because that is the freedom that Langston Hughes and the African Americans of Harlem 100 years ago understood to be important and valuable and necessary to justice and equity and the dignity of all human beings. Please rise wherever you are, in spirit and in body. If you're at home, just turn off the camera if you need to. Move.
Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom, freedom is calling. Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom, freedom is calling. Oh, freedom.
Our closing words come from the Reverend William Sinkford. There is so much work to do, and we've only just begun to imagine justice and mercy. May we hold fast to our vision of what can be. May we see hope in our history and find the courage and voice to work for that constant rebirth of freedom and justice. We extinguish our chalice, but not the flame of light and love, which inspire us to work for freedom and justice for all. May this not become a dream deferred. Now, let's go.
Joshua in the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua in the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Joshua in the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua in the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. You may talk about your man of Gideon, you may talk about your man of Saul. There's none like good old Joshua at the battle of Jericho. Joshua in the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua in the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Up to the walls of Jericho, emerged to the Spirit hand. The Roman ranks going Joshua, that the battle is in my hand. And the lamb sheep horn began to blow, a trumpet began to sound. Joshua commanded the children to shout, and the walls come tumbling down. Oh. Joshua